Most reports I've read say the Muslims going into India killed maybe 200 million.
Nonsense. You just pulled it out of thin air, quite frankly, because it's not historical.
No, I read it on a website, and it was actually.
Yeah, but I know, but Michael, you know what it is. I don't go to the Ku Klux Klan website to find out about black Africans, do I?
You're sitting in a place that has caused some of the most devastation in the world that we have seen, and you're throwing pebbles at other people.
You guys were saying atheists have killed more people than anyone else, and most reports I've read say the Muslims going into India, into the Hindu Valley, killed maybe 200 million. The Mongols.
Nonsense.
Nonsense.
So this is far right Hindu. So let's make a calculation. Yeah. How
that would be a lot of people for back then.
Yeah, that would be a lot of people. Yeah, because you're talking about population growth. So what has been the population growth of India, say, over the last 10 years? I'll look it up now while we're doing it.
They're over a billion here. I think
they're over a billion now. They're the biggest
1.1 billion.
Yeah, they're the biggest country in the world now.
Sure,
population,
right?
But what was the population? So let's backtrack this.
Sure. If you go back to the 11th century, you can't imagine there was 200 million people in India. But
no. So in the 1960s, there were less than. There were probably about 400 million people there.
Okay.
How many people do you think there would have been 300 years ago, 400 years ago?
Yeah, like 50 million.
So the idea that, and now you have to understand that even now the Muslims form less than 20% of the population.
Right.
So the idea that
the Muslims were a small percentage of the population, but
the idea that people came in and killed 200 million people, it's just blatantly historical. Doesn't make sense.
It's over the course of about 500 years. I mean, when was the Islamic invasion of India?
Islamic invasion of India?
Yeah, the 1000s, 1100s.
No. The Muslims came into contact much earlier than this. But the point here was that the claim that's being made is that 200 million people were killed.
Right.
Even if we go back to that time, let's go back 1,000 years, right? Even if you go back 1,000 years, then that the population wouldn't have been that large anyway. To kill 200 million people, you wouldn't.
Yeah, no, they're not killing them.
They wouldn't have existed.
They're not killing them in a day or a year. They're killing them over the course of hundreds of years.
No, but then still you wouldn't. That's what I'm saying to you. The numbers don't make sense.
Okay, and I agree. 200 million seems like a fantastical number.
I agree with you. So why bring it up?
Well, we're trying to work out the numbers. Let's see where they're really at.
So you can't just make them up.
We've quoted some numbers from far-right Hindu nationalists who are anti-Muslim and saying this.
I'm not taking my numbers from the RSS.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying I'm just saying that's where these numbers come from.
Okay.
People who are going around at the moment making the claims that 200 million Hindus were killed by Muslims, the people who are saying this now are the RSS and BJP supporters. That's where the data is coming from. And I think there's one historian who says this. Okay. And he's like, and these are the same people who say that the Taj Mahal was, created by the Hindus, and the same people who, to destroy the mosque in Ayodhya are now building a temple over it, saying that this was there was something to do with Ram that was consecrated there beforehand. These are the same people who are, who said that we will take any refugees from the surrounding countries except for Muslims, whilst at the same time asking millions of Muslims who'd been in the country, hundreds of millions of Muslims who've been in the country, to prove their citizenship. And if you cannot prove your citizenship, and these are people without access to paperwork, who've been there for generations, poor people living in simple huts, farmers' lives, indentured farmers' lives, and these people having now to prove their citizenship without paperwork, cannot prove their citizenship, are no longer allowed to stay in the country as people who are seeking refuge, and therefore they're being imprisoned in camps. This is the same group of people who are doing these things.
Exactly. Michael, how many years did Muslims rule India for?
Maybe 300.
Hundreds and hundreds of years, right?
Okay, right.
If they wanted to wipe out every single Hindu and destroy every single temple, they could have done so, couldn't they?
Not necessarily. I mean, that
Really?
would be
They had
like
power for hundreds. They had power for hundreds of years. They
sure,
were capable of killing. They were capable of killing apparently 200 million Hindus. But guess what? They couldn't finish them all off.
right.
It just,
Sure.
you know, look. The thing here, Michael, is this. Yeah.
Well,
And
it's like look at America.
Michael,
Can I speak?
Michael, this is the problem, right? This is the problem.
Okay.
You've come here. You quoted a figure. You've just pulled it out of thin air, quite frankly, because it's not historical.
No, I read it on a website, and it was actually.
Yeah, but I know, but Michael, you know what it is. I don't go to the Ku Klux Klan website to find out about black Africans, do I? I don't do that, do I, Michael? I don't.
No,
It would just be something absurd to do, right? I wouldn't go to the Ku Klux Klan website to find out about, black rights in Africa. I wouldn't do that, or black rights, sorry, in America. I wouldn't do that, would I? Because that to me, that would be stupid, right? That would be completely stupid to do, right? So what I'm trying to say is,
are liars.
Michael, what I'm trying to say to you is that if we're going to have an honest discussion, and we're going to have a discussion that's based upon balance and fairness, which has got some evidence to back it up and something with history, and I think this is what shows the veracity and the strength of Islam, and I'll tell you why. Because everyone I seem to speak to that wants to try to attack Islam inevitably will end up in falsehood, nonsense, hearsay. I read it on a website. My friend told me in a pub after we had 15 pints, therefore it's true. It sort of resorts to this sort of nonsense. And I think what that shows us is if there really was something beefy, something really of force, of something of power to convince the masses about what Islam is false, people would bring it forward. But the very fact that they have to bring in fabrication, lies, manipulations, and just utter hearsay, it just shows the veracity of Islam, quite frankly. It just shows, and I'm talking about non-Muslim historians. When you look at the works of Karen Armstrong, when you look at Leslie Hazelton, when the agnostic Jew, when you look at what they say about the Muslim empire, when you look at the historical information provided by Professor Roy Casagranda, look at his works, Roy Casagranda, and how the Muslim empire, how they behaved, how the caliphs behaved, how the armies behaved. I'm not saying it was rosy all the time. It was perfect, that you won't find areas and times where things were done which were un-Islamic, which were bad. But even if you go to non-Muslim historians, Roy Casagranda is a classic one when he talks about the conquest of Jerusalem. How when Umar Khattab, the second caliph, comes into Jerusalem and he questions the Christian, he says, "Where are the Jews?" And he says, "We killed them. We threw them out of the city. They're not here anymore." And what does Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu do? The second caliph of Islam, the most powerful man in the Islamic empire. He says, "You cannot do this." And he turns to a new convert and he says, "Go and find me 80 Jewish families." And he reinstates them in Jerusalem. This is our history. Alhamdulillah. We're proud of it. We're proud of our history. So when you come up with this sort of nonsense, you've got to back it up with evidence, hard, rock solid evidence. Not I read it on a website. I don't go to the Ku Klux Klan, don't go to Hindutva websites to learn about what Muslims did in India or anywhere else for that matter. Go to independent, not Muslim sources. Go to independent historians who are widely accepted. Their works are widely accepted to be truthful, to be correct. And they support our stance of what Islam was historically, not your stance, and not the other guy who came from, South America or whatever, not his stance, but our stance. And they're not Muslim, by the way. And I think that's important. Okay. And that shows the veracity of Islam, quite frankly.
Okay. So under the Pact of Omar, right, you mentioned Omar, the second rightly guided caliphate, were churches allowed to like ring their bells, and were they allowed to celebrate in public the religion?
That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant.
Okay.
I'll tell you why that's irrelevant. I'll tell you why that's completely irrelevant. Because we're talking about Catholicism that went up and butchered murdered, slaughtered, including the Jews, went on pogroms. The Jews ran out of Europe to Muslim lands for security.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all know the Inquisition.
Yeah, and we know that I mean, just look at, we were speaking about Stalin, the atheist who banned religions. Yeah,
Stalin was an atheist.
He banned religions. 110 million by some estimates still killed under his control. Then you look at Pol Pot. He was, I think he was ruler. He was looking over. He was ruling Cambodia. At least 2 million.
Rouge, the killing fields.
Absolutely, the killing fields. At least 2 million people there.
Millions of people in this place.
Mao Zedong. He was ruled China after
Mao Zedong.
Absolutely.
The great
unknown tens of millions of people killed. That's right.
Cultural Revolution.
All of these people, anti-religion, banned religions. So they are representatives of atheism.
They are. And they are very poor representatives of atheism.
I agree with you, poor representation. But the point here is I'm making that this was the point that was being made. Now, you don't seem to disagree with that point. So I don't know what.
No, I don't. I in no way said I disagree with the fact that atheists have killed millions of people. I'm not sure they've killed the most. And again, it's a numbers game.
Okay, I think you need to do some research maybe on this. There's a book that someone's recommended in the back chat called The Body Count, a quantitative review of political violence across world civilizations. I'll put the link into the.
I see.
Brother. Yeah, I'll put it absolutely. I'll put it into the chat, and we thank the brother for this. And
Elijah Quick was the one who said Saddam made some mistakes, but was a good force in the Middle East.
Sorry.
Eliza Quick, the person, and I just looked over to the back chat. He's a Russian, but he's the one who said when I was in the chat, not in the backstage, said Saddam has made some mistakes, but he was a good force in the Middle East.
No, America were the best force for. Obviously, they did wonderful work in their work in the Middle East is unparalleled. I mean, really, if you really want to help, if you really want to liberate people from people who you've been supporting for tens of decades to abuse and rule over their people, if you really want to help liberate those people, what you need to do is to get depleted uranium-tipped weapons and fire enough weapons into their country to cause mutilations and deformations for generations to continue, kill over 500 million children and think the price is worth it. Because why? Well, we need the oil, isn't it? I mean, the oil is really important, because we have a really wonderful worldview, and and we like to do these things. So
when Saddam invaded Kuwait, I was all for just buy the oil from Saddam. Why put the Kuwaiti oil?
I appreciate that. The problem here is that you're sitting in a place that has caused some of the most devastation in the world that we have seen.
There's no doubt about that.
And you're throwing pebbles at other people. Don't throw stones if you live in a glass house.